Thank you all for coming. Our first meeting of 2015. Madam Clerk, it's a very busy agenda, as everyone can see, so we're going to have to try to discipline ourselves, keep ourselves structured as much as we possibly can. Are there any items to add to the agenda? I don't see any. Madam Clerk.
Good. First item are minutes of the Council and Committee meeting held Monday, December 15th. Recommendations that the committee approve.
Second. Grant and Terry, all in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Moving on to delegations. Our first delegation is from Sean Spear and Bill Briscall of Rain City Housing. They're here to provide an update on shelter and housing project at 3030 Gordon Avenue.
Welcome, gentlemen. The floor is yours.
Okay. Hi. Good afternoon. I'm Sean Spear. I'm Associate Director with Rain City Housing. And my colleagues here today with me is Bill Briscall, who's a Communications Manager with us. And in the back here we have Sandy Burpee, as you all know, the task force, and Andy Hiscock from City Spaces, and Rob Thiessen with Hope for Freedom. So first of all, I really want to thank you all so much for providing the land for this project, the foresight to make this happen, and maintaining the political will for this over these years. I'm going to give a brief overview of a little bit about Rain City Housing and focus on where the shelter is now. And you have a package, so I'm just going to go through the first slides quickly, and if there's any questions, answer. This side. Yeah. So this is in your package, but Rain City Housing mission statement there, and I'll go to the next slide. Actually, we have been around since 1982 as a small emergency shelter, and we provide a range of services from emergency housing, supported housing, women's housing, long-term housing, outreach, and food services. So we have over 30 years of experience, and we've established these new programs based on the needs as they've arisen in the community, mainly in Vancouver. And currently, we have 654 people with housing and places to live, and including pets and our staff teams. We provide 608 nutritious meals and 100 people with emergency shelter and additional support. This is also our 7th year that we've been operating cities shelters within the city under emergency shelters, and we've been doing that in different neighborhoods, 5 different neighborhoods for the last 7 years. I'll just take a look at some of our facilities. This is all in your package, but we've done purpose-built facilities before in neighborhoods where there's been support of the community and community advisory committees set up, and that's our one at 39th and Fraser, and the one that we're talking about today is another one of the purpose-built ones. So give you just examples of that. The Coquitlam shelter is going to look a little bit like some of these shelters on the inside. Does kitchens, and that actually is very similar to what the transition units are going to be looking like at the Coquitlam shelter here in November when we open. We have a couple of new projects this year. Budsy Building, part of the city sites. That one's a big building of 147 units for housing for women and children, and that's scheduled to open over the next few months. And then our other big project this year, mainly focused on today, is the 3030 Gordon. As most of you all very well and put in time and effort over the years, and we are really, really pleased to see that moving forward and finally opening this year in November. November 12th is the date that we are supposed to be getting our occupancy this year. So just a bit of a background on that. You've been involved, and some are new, so giving a bit of the background there. In December of 2011, we were selected as the operators, and then we joined the task force, the Homeless Housing Task Force, and we participated at the Connect Day program, participated in some design, planning, and safety security meetings throughout, this time. Most of our focus has been on the design and planning and building with our project team to get this shelter ready to the point where we're at now. And that's just some of our engagement pieces. We've set out, here's some of the timeline for it. It's August, we set out the newsletter. The site was cleared in August or September. All the trees were cleared there. And in November, the construction began for the one-year build. And we've joined the task group for the subcommittee, which has been struck as part of the homeless task force. We have a subcommittee that's specifically looking at issues to do with the shelter when we're getting open. A lot of the issues are how are tenants going to be selected, the use of volunteers. Coquitlam, as you all know, has a really strong base of volunteers here, and we really want to capitalize on that and be able to use that volunteer base in which ways make sense in the new shelter. And those packages are in your packages, the newsletters and the information that went out to all the neighbors from Vantana, which is our builder. They're a general contractor who are located in Burnaby. So in that subcommittee, we're working with our other collaborators, including Hope for Freedom, and talking about Hope for Freedom will still have their outreach team in place when the shelter opens. So how are we going to work with them, and how are we going to use any of the other services that are already located in Coquitlam? So, yeah. The next, I'll just go over a bit of the upcoming steps. We're actually talking to some of the neighbors door to door over the next couple of weeks alongside with Hope for Freedom. We're very familiar with the services here, of course, and the folks. So that's one of the things attached to our things to do on our subcommittee. And then construction updates. We've gone through the first parts of the construction. There were some major piles driven in there, and we haven't had a lot of complaints from neighbors at all on the construction so far, but they do have a timeline as to how things are going and how it's going, what the major points are. There will be a community advisory committee. We have these at a number of our projects, and as one area where I think you're probably familiar with the Community Advisory Committee, but we've been successful having those with delegated positions on that. It's an advisory committee that was mainly around the exterior operations of the facility, how it impacts the neighborhood. But I know that from council and from the city, we usually have designated spots there, and through myself or the subcommittee, it'd be great to know if there would be somebody who's delegated specifically that's part of their job would be to be involved in this community advisory committee.
It's usually city planner. It's part of those committees in the
Yeah. So, okay, well, yeah, I talked about the community advisory and other reps from your organization or from the city. Local businesses, residential neighbors, RCMP in this case, probably someone from BC Housing, and we usually have some neighbors and then even tenants on there. And then just, if you haven't been by the site, this is where we're at right now.
A week ago today.
Yeah, a week ago today. So the piles are in, they're working on the foundation, and working towards November with a really tight timeline with this construction. And we have built into the construction ways in which, if things do seem to be getting delayed whatsoever, they have contingencies to work on Saturdays and that type of thing if necessary. And it's a very tight timeline to make sure that it's open in November. And so there was 90 of those piles that were driven in there because the soil conditions. So we don't have a basement, but we have a 4-story wood frame building with 30 units of transition and 30 units of shelter, emergency shelter, and then 30 units for cold, wet weather. Well, if you've, so that's the main presentation. If you've, thank you for your time and your support. These are the contacts that are in your package, and we take any questions that you have.
Okay, well, I do want to thank you for coming out. We have lots of questions raised in the community about the project, obviously, because this was it's been a long time coming. We feel pretty passionate about it. There's also a lot of community groups that consider themselves to be partners, and we consider them to be partners in homeless issues. We want you to consider them to be partners. We've spoken before about the idea of including those advocacy groups, those feet on the ground in the work that you're doing, and we not just encourage you. We're expecting that our community groups that want to be part of this, the churches, the others, will be. And I've said it before, so I had to say it again.
It's a huge advantage that Tri-Cities has, and Rob mentioned that in the last group meeting, how per capita, I think it's the highest place in North America. So it's a great thing. We don't want it to go away.
Absolutely. Thank you. Brent.
I guess, thank you. And I know, understanding the tight timeline that you're under for your construction, things can go wrong. Do you have a backup plan for one of the churches to be activated as a cold weather map program in case there is delay not getting in by the 12th or the end of November?
Yeah, we're looking at that right now. We were talking about that at the task force last week there, and through our subcommittee and through with Hope for Freedom, and the volunteer coordinator is going to come to our next subcommittee at the end of the month, and they were definitely going to have a contingency plan around that, because if things look like they're going to be delayed, we definitely have to have a plan around that, and have done that often in Vancouver with our various projects and opened emergency shelters, and I know that system already is in place here, so
yeah.
We'll utilize that, absolutely.
Good, thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
I just want to congratulate you on the outreach that you've already done and the work that you've done in the community to let people know how the construction's going to roll out and make them aware of all the pile driving, because to drive 90 piles 90 feet in the ground without one neighbor complaining is pretty exceptional. So congratulations, and I encourage you to keep that up. And I know you're planning on doing it, so it's fantastic.
Yeah, I know that Vantana had given a number of examples of their success in working on their projects, and as any builder, but they really seem to do a great job with working with neighbors around their construction jobs that they have done.
Good. Thank you very much for coming in. Thank you. And thank you to all those that are continue to work on cold, wet weather mat and such.
Thanks.
Thank you. All three of the next months are in Coquitlam for the cold, wet weather mat.
Delegations, Mr. Raymond Nothstein and Derek Reed of Westfield Holdings, here to provide an overview of their rezoning and official community plan amendment applications for a proposed subdivision in the 3500 block of Sheffield Avenue. This is item 7 on this evening's regular council agenda.
Mr. Nothstein. The previous group illustrated how to keep on schedule.
Oh. A little dense. Is that a hint? Mayor and council, it's good to see you again this new year. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Raymond Nothstein, and this is Derek Reed. We're both development managers at Westfield. Derek is the one that has been working on the details and shepherding this project through, so I'm going to defer all the difficult questions to Derek when we get to that part. Behind you or up on this screen is an overview of Burke Mountain. In general, when we're looking at these maps, all of the area in the dark blue outline are those lands that are owned by Westfield. And we are looking at what is referred to as our PC2, or Partington Creek 2 subdivision. And when I was looking through putting this presentation together, I realized this is about our, depending how you count it, but this is our 25th neighborhood on Burke Mountain. It's been quite an amazing journey. This neighborhood is Really not a lot different than what we've been doing. It's somewhat business as usual, but with a couple of new members on council and the start of the new year, and also this being the first application in the Partington Creek neighborhood, we thought this would be an opportunity to come forward in a less formal setting. So if there's any questions from council, we can go through those with you. With our Partington Creek 2 neighborhood, we're taking a phased approach to this. We're biting it off in chunks that are manageable from an environmental point of view, from a tree clearing, from a construction point of view. We have a subsequent phase that will be coming forward at a later time. In the staff report on council tonight, your attachment 2 is probably the best plan to look at in terms of what we're referring to. This new neighborhood has 137 lots, and as part of it, we will be dedicating to the city environmentally protected creek lands, a corridor for a trail running up beside the creek, which is part of a larger network that we've been building on the mountain over the last few years. There's also going to be a 6-acre school site, which is another step forward for the community. Now, if we can get some schools in, that would be even better, but one step at a time. On that attachment 2, you'll see that Sheffield Avenue is continuing across from what we call our SC4, Smiling Creek 4 subdivision. North of that is the new road network that you'll see has similarity to SC4 as well, where we kind of mirrored it across Burke Mountain Creek. There's the what will be the start of the Harper Road extension, which will go off to the west. With all of the roads and the houses, we know that parking is an issue. We know that it's an issue that's very dear to council, mostly because it's being a bit frustrating for the residents in some of the first subdivisions. So we've been working with your transportation staff and maximizing on-street parking as much as we can. And part of this is actually being a little bit to the detriment of the home builders, where you pair driveways and you create more space for the parking, which is important, but it adds some challenges to the house construction, et cetera. But that's all part of the balance that we need to do for each of these neighborhoods. And you'll see that sort of grayed out on that drawing, as I referred to it, the second phase as we're going about this in this phase approach. Also, what we're bringing forward is exactly what has been asked for in the Partington Creek neighborhood plan, what's been asked for in the official community plan. So there are no changes, there are no variances that we're seeking. And as part of that neighborhood plan, there are no parks that are associated with this particular neighborhood. So what we'll be doing is the two approaches that one can either provide parks or what's called cash in lieu. And cash in lieu is, by the Local Government Act, is based on the current market value prior to servicing. And we will be working with staff to come to agreement on that value. But what it will mean to the city is that we will be contributing for that 5% cash in lieu probably a little over $3 million towards the city, towards its park program. Again, when I was looking at what we've been doing here, over the last few years, we have now brought forward over 1,000 single-family lots, 16 townhouse sites, 2 commercial buildings that we built at Coast and David, a high school site, a daycare site, a network of trails, probably tens of kilometers, and 8 city parks, a couple of which we've worked with the city for the actual construction of the park as well as providing the site. So we really look forward to council support in our latest and our current neighborhood, and Derek and I are here to answer any questions.
Councillor Hodge.
Great, thank you. I'm glad you touched on parking, because that's what we always hear, and we know we'll hear about that in future discussions. The road widths are, and because I still do better in feet than meters, these road widths, are they back to the city standards, not the ones that we used in the earlier neighborhoods? Is that correct?
Well, they've always been city standards.
But the other
But
part
we're
of the
now
city,
moved back to the wider roads.
Wider roads, so the traditional, I'll go to the traditional widths, parking on both sides.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good. I'm glad you mentioned we're going to try to pair driveways, looking for hybrid placement, all that kind of stuff, so that we, as we know up there, every single spot counts. And people are even getting creative trying to create spots where they don't exist. So I want to make sure we create as many spots as we can going in. Signage. Again, one of the things we hear about, particularly in a new neighborhood, is that, oh, nobody told me this was going to be a through road, that this is going to be an arterial road, that sort of thing. So I think we've now got a city policy in place that we're going to try and make sure that going in, that especially with pre-sales, that we're going to get everything well marked. Mm-hmm. I'm curious on the school site. That's the other thing we hear about there is schools. As we know, city doesn't build them, you don't build them. I suppose we did, we'd have them by now, but we won't go into that part. Other than to ask, I'm curious on this evening's report, page 7, it says, agreement in principle with the applicant, the province, to acquire the subject school site following the formal subdivision process, and it mentions a tri-party agreement. Mm-hmm. Is that just an agreement on how it's going to be, or is that actually an agreement to transfer this land to the district immediate? I'm just sort of wondering what the process is for that land going to the school district.
It's sort of all of the above. When Westfield originally purchased these lands, part of the deal with the province was that the province held title to certain blocks of land that would be used for future school sites. And then with our original purchase and sale agreement, we had the ability to, buy, sell, depending on what happened in the future. So what's happening with this site is that approximately 4 acres are already owned by the province, and they will continue to own it. There's approximately another 2 acres which the school district will be purchasing, and as part of an agreement with them, we are selling them that land at the original price from 10, 12 years ago now, so highly, highly discounted. And so that tri-party agreement is between the province and the school district primarily, and then Westfield in its ability to transfer those lands and bring them together.
So 4 of the acres are owned by the province already?
Correct.
So that's why on page 1, when I see owner 1 and owner 2, that's where the provincial government comes into that, which answers my second question. Okay? And we don't anticipate that this is going to be a joint school city park. This is strictly a school site, not like what we're doing in Smiling Creek then.
That is my understanding.
Okay. That's good. Thank you very much. That answers my questions.
Councilor O'Neill.
Yes, thank you. Continuing on the school, and I just wanted to clarify this. This would be, I think, the school that the school board is calling the Partington Creek Elementary.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yep.
And my understanding from the public timeline that the school district issued some time ago is that and I want to know if your understanding is this, that the construction of that would, the window of 2019 to 2021, something like that. Do you know anything about that? That was...
I don't know if you picked up anything from your meeting today. No, I mean...
Yeah.
We started some conceptual design of the school site, but as to when it will actually be constructed.
At the time, when they issued this timeline, they had the Smiling Creek 2014 to 2016. I think that's now to 2017. So it could be that what they see as the Partington Creek Elementary, which is the second of the 5 schools that the school district foresees being built. I think that may well be later as well. It's unknown. But at this stage, so you don't have any other information. It's 2019 to 2021.
Not any more than, yeah.
Okay, so it's not going to be, even though this is all happening right now, that school won't be there for quite a while.
We just have to convince Surrey that they need schools less than we do.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Good.
But
Okay.
although we're building these servicing the subdivision now, the house construction and the buildup of the residents to support the school would be several years away.
It's several years away as well.
The house construction wouldn't start for about a year from today.
Yeah.
So you don't really have residents living up here for 18 months to 2 or 3 years.
Right. And even that one subdivision might not be enough to support this school as well, so it might need other construction around that. Good, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilor Asmus.
Well, thank you for coming out and giving us an opportunity to ask some questions on this proposal. It's a large proposal, and one of the questions I was going to ask about phasing, and Ray, you answered that you will be taking it. So I went up there, and I've taken a walk around from Burke Mountain Promenade, Harbor, and in that area, and the grades, the steepness, and there's a lot of water in the ground up there, right? So I was concerned after your last subdivision where you did a a large clear, and it got some backlash at the visual aspect, looking out on the mountain. So you're going to take a bit smaller, 5-10 acre chunks at a time?
No, I'll get Derek to answer that in more detail, but no, we consider this first phase as a smaller chunk, if you will. It's a piece that we can do as a construction phase. We'll be in the ground, and houses should be up and built, in sort of 10 months from now. But Derek, you've been working closely with staff on how we will go about the ESC and the tree clearing.
Sure. So as Ray pointed out, we are intending on clearing this entire subdivision today. Bird nesting season starts in March, runs till about August. So we need to clear the trees and remove the trees in advance of the bird nesting window. That will allow us to continue with servicing the site, optimizing the use of spring, summer, and fall construction. As we pointed out, Burke Mountain gets a fair bit of rain. The most ideal time is construction during the drier months of the year. So we'll be trying to utilize that period of time. Stormwater management is a part of our business. We do it day in, day out. We strive to set the bar and exceed these standards set by City of Coquitlam.
I do have concerns about this 35, 37 acres of land on a fairly more steep slope, and so I guess I'll leave that to staff. I'll raise that as a concern, being all in one shot. I think that there may be I thought the more phased approach into how you clear, because as you said, as you move into this, it's going to be a number of years before houses are built. If you go in stages up the mountain, it might be a thought. The other thing is, I don't believe that the storm diversion pipe is connected up that far, so.
Correct. We have a solution to manage the stormwater, which we put forward to staff. During the initial clearing stage, that water, as it does today, flows downhill into the forest. So we are, during the tree clearing stage, the natural water flows mimic today's forested area. During our stormwater management proposal, we have a series of ditches and sediment ponds that again utilize the forest and mimic the forest condition, thereby putting the water back to the forest and utilizing that resource.
And part of, as this phasing and clearing, normally we've gone in and cleared the trees, pulled the stumps and grubbed sort of in one go. This time, as part of this first stage, we'll be leaving the stumps in place so that the water table, the water management, as Derek said, is more natural than what we've done before.
So you'll be leaving some of the in-ground stuff to protect because it's just the slopes. And I like the plan here, Raymond. I think you fit everything to what it's in the plan. So to me, there's no comments on that. My only comment is just walking up through there and going through. It's kind of muddy, but it's just that part. And I guess that's for you and staff. And I guess my concerns through the staff will work with you on that. I mean, I've seen some issues up there in the past with some water issues, and the forest can only take up so much water. And when you do clear out that trees, the canopy, that you're going to have more, and that natural forest area won't be able to take that water. And we get more rain, Craig, on Burke Mountain than anywhere else in Coquitlam. And as you go up higher, you intensify that, right?
And as a developer on Burke Mountain, we're quite familiar with the amount of rainfall that falls on that hillside on an annual basis, and we're continuing to manage that. All of our subdivisions in Westville always strives to be the best up there. We've worked with NCON and Intercat and Golder Engineering to derive a servicing plan, a stormwater management plan that meets the bylaw, that limits the risk and exposure. Thanks to staff, over the past several months, we've put in some road networks up through the Partington Creek neighborhood that allowed us to establish some ditch networks to stabilize the water so that we could then proceed with the clearing stage.
Yeah, we take it seriously.
Oh, I know. Just very. Goes up there. Just want to raise it.
Yeah. And further to that, we have, between NCON, GEMCO, and Westfield, we are continually monitoring stormwater management on that development.
Carl, you had something to add?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just wanted to know that staff will be
meeting with Glass Building, looking on the erosion and sediment.
Yep. Good. We knew you would. And Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I'm done. Great. We've had, in my short time on council, we've dealt with two contentious daycare proposals that were proposed to go into established areas already. And one of the discussions we had is if we could only get ahead of the game and sort of plan for daycare before the houses are built, then people know, where they're going to be and it's, properly situated location and that sort of thing. So has there been any consideration to childcare in this plan at all?
Not specifically. One of the things that I think is great about Coquitlam zoning bylaw is the fact that daycares are allowed in single-family neighborhoods, and you can pick the spot that's right for it rather than sort of pre-zoning. Daycare is very much a market-driven sort of activity, so I think it's best to let the market find the location, find the timing for a daycare site. A good example was in our what we call our SC3 subdivision, where that application came in really at the very beginning of the whole process and was there before the residents came in. So I think that's an example of how it can work in Coquitlam. Our understanding with the school district is that they don't actively do daycare or try to find partnerships or have consider that as part of their facilities, if you will. I know at my wife's school, they are working with the City of Vancouver. They are working with the Y, and they will have a before and after daycare. So the school districts tend to go at that model a bit differently. But again, I think it's, if we had a daycare operator come to us, we would work with them to find the appropriate site and bring it through the process as early as possible.
Mr. McIntyre.
Just thank you, Your Worship, and good afternoon. Just a little further on, Ray's comments are bang on in terms of the zoning bylaw and our city's approach in terms of widen that opportunity as the needs arise.
Actually, why don't we hand the microphone back there, or take one of the portable areas.
Thank you. And just very briefly, I know the question had been raised, and we'd also done some checking with school district. Apparently with the design of some of the newer schools, they're looking at flexible space in those schools. If there was a demand at some point in time, that may be a possibility. So on this one, I wanted to speak now because there's people hearing the discussion, but if council wants to raise this tonight, certainly staff can take that as direction. We could look into that a little further and then report back at a public hearing brief if you wish.
Well, I just think it's just if we can get ahead of the game, we're better off. Have you had any daycare providers approach you to talk about any potential sites in Partington Creek?
So far with this one, no. We did have, again in SC3, we did have a local daycare provider. It's their second, and they were the ones that had the issue with the one just recently, where they are, they want to continue to expand on the hill, but we haven't heard from them to date.
I guess the other challenge, though, is if I was opening a child care facility, I don't know if I would want to be one of the first ones in an area either, right? So how do we, it's a chicken and egg kind of thing. And so I guess that's why I'm wondering if how do we, and I don't know, maybe it is, working closer with the school district to make sure that there's a corner of the land, like, almost every elementary school in our district now has a portable with a child care facility. I'm trying to avoid having portables in a brand new area, right? And so yeah, I guess my question would be if that could be explored a little bit further, that'd be awesome. Parking on the bottom cul-de-sac, it's a very short cul-de-sac, and you can't usually park at the end of a cul-de-sac, and 6 meters from the stop sign you can't park, so it looks like there's very little parking on that bottom cul-de-sac. How would the driveways on these houses be similar length of driveways to what currently is up in Burketown?
Yeah, generally speaking. Even though it's a shorter road, that means there's less houses, but the opportunities between those driveways would remain the same on a short road or a longer road.
Except that there's only maybe 8 houses before the stop sign, and you got 6 meters. You can't. I'm just concerned that if most of those houses have secondary suites, Any thoughts on how to deal with parking on such a short street like that?
No. I mean, again, it's, the proportion is still similar as it would be for a longer road. You've still got the same gaps between those driveways and less homes, less demand. But, we're maximizing it as much as we can, plus the zoning bylaw and the requirements for on-site parking.
Okay, well, and then the last question is just, and I don't know if this is too early in the game, but the path at the end of the cul-de-sacs into the trail area, which is awesome. Any chance of having a bridge go over to the creek to the other cul-de-sac?
That's such a good idea. Derek's already built it.
He's already built it?
There's one existing at the end of Hadley Wood.
Oh, there is? Okay,
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
That's what I'm Good foresight.
Okay, and one of the, when we don't take the bulb all the, when we don't shorten the street and allow a bunch of pies at the end, then we do, and when we do, I'll just reverse that. When we allow a bunch of pie-shaped lots at the end, then we do have the parking issue because there's no on-street parking for those 6 houses in the bulb because there's driveways touching each other. And so here, we do have some end of bulb, if you will. Fewer issues at the bulb. Councillor Zerillo.
Thanks. I've got a question for tonight probably, which is about just the drainage of traffic south, because it doesn't look like we'll have that yet. It will be Coast Meridian mostly. For exiting, for people that live in that neighborhood. The way to get out of the neighborhood will be filtering through Coast Meridian. Is that true for the first little while?
It'd be coming out over Sheffield, and I guess via Harbour back to Princeton.
But south, how do they get out of Brook Mountain?
It'd be Sheffield down to Princeton across David Avenue to Coast.
So, but that's what I'm wondering. So Coast Meridian is your south route only, because we're not going to have these additional south routes.
Correct.
That's going to go into a Fremont connector.
The city constructs those. So everything right now would come out of Sheffield to Princeton and down to David.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that for going forward. I have a question just about logistics, about the mutually exclusive choices around park, residential, because we've got 3 things in this OCP amendment. We've got the residential area, we've got the park, and we've got the school. Mm-hmm. So if we get an objection to one of those 3 pieces as we move to public hearing, does it come as a package deal? All 3 need to be approved at the same time? Can you just give me some idea about how logistically that would work if there was an objection to any one of those 3 pieces from the community?
In this subdivision, I would suggest that it comes as a package deal. This is what we've worked with staff. It's what the neighborhood plan proposes, and that's what we followed. When you say park, there isn't a park.
Sorry, the 5%, so that won't be an issue. It'll be more about the school. Like, I'm wondering if the school doesn't work, can we still go with the subdivision? If the subdivision doesn't work, can we still OCP change for the school? Like, I'm wondering.
Something like a big component like a school, 6 acres, that would take a full redesign. And I'd say it's a package deal.
So is that the way they usually come forward in a package deal like this, or is this unusual?
Mm-hmm. No, this is very normal.
Okay. That was just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sometimes they subdivide first and they make separate applications, but this is not uncommon at all.
For a whole neighborhood.
And that was it. Anybody else? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing you all tonight.
Good font selection. I can read it from here.
Item 4 is a report regarding the draft Austin-Rochester Integrated Watershed Management Plan. We have introductory comments by our General Manager of Engineering and Public Works and the presentation by the Engineering Project Coordinator.
Thank you, Your Worship. For those of you who haven't been able to read this, we are pleased to present you the just completed draft Austin-Rochester Integrated Watershed Management Plan, also known as IWMP, another milestone enabling us to better manage our environment. This draft plan is the 7th IWMP in Coquitlam, prepared by a multidisciplinary consulting team directed by a staff committee. Melanie Burton, our engineering project coordinator, will take you through a short presentation highlighting the most important elements of this IWMP. I'd like to mention that Melanie is also the chair of the Stormwater Interagency Liaison Group, a regional Metro Vancouver policy and planning committee that coordinates regional efforts to fulfill municipal stormwater commitments to the Minister of Environment, and the IWMP is an integral part of that committee work. Melanie?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So as Joseph mentioned, this short presentation will provide you an overview of the Austin-Rochester Integrated Watershed Management Plan. I'm going to start with some background information, and then I'm going to talk about the key issues in this watershed and recommendations from the plan. I'm also going to use this opportunity to provide you with an update on our citywide IWMP program. And then I'll finish off by explaining how we plan to check the effectiveness of these plans to ensure that they're indeed working to improve watershed health. So the Austin and Rochester Creek watersheds are both small and they're built out. They have short sections of remaining open creek channel, and they both drain to the Burnett River. So because of these similar attributes, it made sense to consider these catchments together under one watershed plan. And we know that areas within both of these watersheds are going to experience significant development associated with both the Evergreen Line and with updates to the Lougheed and Coquitlam neighborhood plan areas. Now, despite pressures from urban development and being piped for the majority of their run, both Austin and Rochester Creeks actually have good water quality. And the creeks also provide food and nutrients to the downstream Burnett River, which boasts some of the most noteworthy habitat in the Lower Mainland. So the issues in this watershed are all related to urban development. Those remaining open channel creek sections have been impacted by channelization and by impacts from private property. Similarly, we know that introduced plant species compete with the natural flora. So we also know that the existing drainage system doesn't have capacity to accommodate the additional development flow, and that this extra flow poses potential for watercourse erosion and sedimentation. So to address these issues, the IWMP considers engineering, land use, and environmental objectives to develop some management strategies which address flood protection while also preserving our natural resources. So one of the strategies is to upgrade that drainage system to provide additional capacity. The pipes for upgrading are shown in this figure in purple, and they represent about 1,000 meters of the roughly 30,000 meters of storm pipes in this system, so about 3%. Now, none of the capacity deficiencies are urgent, which means that we can schedule these upgrades in coordination with other capital projects or with land development, or they can be driven by an asset management program as we replace the pipes due to old age. Another management strategy is the application of the city's rainwater management requirements. This is a mandatory incorporation of green infrastructure, and it applies to all new development and redevelopment in the watershed. And it serves to offset development impacts by supporting good water quality and base flow in the creeks. The third strategy will be to monitor the creeks for erosion and erosion and flow as development takes place. Now, if and only if we start to see increases in creek erosion or instability or degradation as development proceeds, then we do have the option to introduce diversion pipes, and that will route damaging high flows around these sensitive open channel creek sections. And the diversion pipe routes are shown by the blue and white dashed lines on the figure. Now, this plan also recommends that watercourse development permits be included in the new Coquitlam Lougheed neighborhood plan. Watercourse development permit areas were considered and included in both the Austin and Mayorville neighborhood plan updates. Lastly, there's recommendations to improve riparian and in-stream habitat where opportunities arise. So a good example of this is the council-approved project to reinstate a section of stream channel in coordination with road and storm sewer improvements on Fairway Street. And I did want to provide a small aside here, and that's that the Rochester Ravine Daylighting Project is not in the Rochester Creek watershed. That project's actually in the Como Creek watershed, located further east, and the Rochester Ravine is called so because of its proximity to Rochester Avenue. So the cost of the Austin-Rochester IWP recommendations is estimated at $5.6 million, and it primarily focuses on upgrades to the existing drainage system. So it's important to note that these IWPs are very long-term plans, and the recommendations are phased over many years, and in coordination with development and infrastructure replacement cycles. So the goal is really to make gradual improvements over time. So under the Regional Liquid Waste Management Plan, we are required to develop IWPs for all urban watersheds by 2016, and we are on target for meeting this goal. The plans that have already been completed are shown in this figure in dark green, and moving west to east, they are Stony, Nelson, Como, Scott, Hyde, and Hardington Creek watersheds. The Austin and Rochester Creek watersheds are depicted as in progress by the light yellow color, as is the Mundy Creek watershed. Also underway are the Maple Creek and Shines IWMPs, and those are joint efforts with Port Coquitlam and Port Moody respectively. Those plans are also substantially complete and currently under review by staff and stakeholders. Now, when we consider the implementation of these plans, the strategy is to address priority items first, and then to balance the remainder of our efforts across all watersheds over several years. So in order to see if these plans are effective in both mitigating development impacts and in bringing about improvements in watershed health, we use environmental monitoring. So monitoring will be conducted every 5 years in each watershed, and it follows the standards set out in the Regional Monitoring and Adaptive Management Framework. Now, this framework provides cost-efficient and effective direction for both the collection and the interpretation of data, as well as for our reporting out to the Ministry of Environment. The primary focus, however, is really on adaptive management. So this means not collecting data for the sake of collecting data, but rather using it to tell us which recommendations are working and which ones aren't. That, in turn, will allow us to focus any corrective actions prudently on only the areas that require it. So this draft Austin-Rochester IWP will be posted on the city's website, and it's also going to be presented at the Coquitlam Lougheed Neighborhood Plan open houses on January 31st and February 4th to garner some public feedback. Following that, we'll bring the final plan back to council for adoption. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor O'Neill.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for the presentation, Melanie. You talked about the long-term plan here, the $5.6 million estimated cost at this stage. Now, reading through the attachments, it looks like that long-term is 50 years. Is that, am I reading that correctly, that it could be this much money over 5 whole years?
Correct. 25 to 50 would be considered medium to long-term.
Okay, so, yeah, so, good. But it really is long-term. It's not going to be just 5 years or something like that. It's
In
all
fact,
this money.
some people refer to these IWMPs as 100-year blueprints. So the drainage infrastructure capacity improvements we'd aim to get done in the next 25 to 50 years. But some of the other things like the riparian improvements or other things that are timed with development, we do them gradually over time as we get opportunities. So.
Right. Oh, that segues perfectly into what I was going to ask about next. So of the addressing the points you had, actually in the discussion, there's 7 bullets. And the 6th bullet is improve riparian and in-stream habitat where opportunities arise. So I'm just trying, primary driver of what we've heard here is to better control the water and to make right? That's the primary driver is water management. Is that correct? I'm just trying to understand what role riparian and in-stream habitat improvements plays in this. Is it an adjunct sort of thing, or is it an integral part?
I think it's looking at the watershed more as a whole. These actually used to be master drainage plans before we took a more holistic approach and realized that the environment and drainage are intricately linked. As is land development, the more hard surfaces we have, the more runoff we get, and that shows impacts to water quality in the creeks, impacts to, say, erosion, and erosion leads to sedimentation, which then impacts fish and fish habitat as well.
So can you give an example of when an opportunity for more improvement of riparian and in-stream habitat would occur? Like, we're talking about something that's likely a big pipe buried right now, and then there's an opportunity to daylight the stream in that area. What circumstance would that be?
Do you have the pointers on here? See that yellow line there where it says improve channel to create new habitat?
Yes.
So
yes,
earlier this year, we had a project to improve Fairway Street, and originally that started out as a paving project. And always when we do paving projects, we look at the underground infrastructure, so that we're not paving a road over and then ripping it up to replace infrastructure. So what we found at that location was that we could put in a storm sewer to provide service to the residents who. Some of the residents didn't have service there. As well, when this plan identified a section of piped stream section right adjacent to the road on the school site. So what we did with this project was lower the storm pipe, and then we are going to expose the stream that's currently piped on the school side. So,
is that a more expensive option than just continuing piping it, or?
It's incrementally more expensive. I think what we budgeted for that stream daylighting was around $70,000. But to do that project in isolation from this road and storm sewer would be much more expensive.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And are there any downsides to daylighting streams? I know we talked about them with the Rochester Park, about how that could have impacted the land that was available for use by the parks. It's been addressed, and we're getting a report tonight on that. But what are the sort of downsides of daylighting streams? Any increased safety hazards, increased flooding hazards, increased whatever? What sort of things we look at there?
I don't know actually any to date, any problems that we've had historically in the region with daylighting. Usually it's generally beneficial. I think any coordination with parks and trails has already been addressed. We've been able to do that, and the flood risk is mitigated. We can split the flows so that whatever we want to go in the pipe can remain in the pipe, and we usually bleed off just some base flows to keep the creek healthy. So.
And there's never been any safety concerns in established neighborhoods where there's homes around? Because I know that an issue that I was involved with a year and a half ago near Scott Creek Middle School was a stream that was a natural stream that hadn't been daylighted. It had always been there, but it seemed to have widened over the years and was collecting under a culvert, and hundreds of kids go by there every day, and we needed to put better railing around that to protect the kids from falling in, and I'm happy that the engineering department moved quickly on that. So
in this particular design, we do have fencing and the mandatory railing put in, but that's generally considered in the design. We're also working with the school, since there's going to be kids walking around there, so we want to look at access and pedestrian safety as well. So it will be addressed.
From an overall perspective, Joseph, do you have any comments, or I can provide some comments as well? But
through your worship, I think what's required here is simply a common sense approach. Obviously, when we have an open ditch or a daylighted section of culvert, it poses its own risks. But generally speaking, particularly for the newer projects, careful engineering design would account for most of these possibilities, and it would be preventive. As for flooding, I don't think that it would be a practical concern, because typically an enclosed storm sewer has more capacity restrictions than an open channel.
Okay.
So I don't think it would be an issue. Now, of course, if there are some weather issues like heavy rainfall event, oversaturated soils and whatnot, and say alongside an open channel there is a pathway, soil conditions can pose a risk to those who want to hike in the area at certain times.
I had just to augment that, I just jotted 4 things down. Generally speaking, when you talk about daylighting, the primary reason for daylighting is that it is better for stream health, environmental issues, that kind of stuff. Natural channels have more capacity in terms of capacity, so there's less flooding concerns. There's more flooding concerns if you ever are trying to enclose an existing stream. There are safety issues which are addressed in design, as they said. And then the other primary thing, as we saw in the park issue, is there's competition for space. If you totally enclose something, of course, you can use a space over top, and that goes away if you daylight it. So there's some of it, from my perspective, those would be the 4 areas that I would say some positive and some somewhat negative.
Right.
But on balance, society has been moving more towards a trend of going back to nature, which includes more daylighting than the last 50 years.
Well, in general, I'm trying to be consistent in my approach to these things, and with Rochester Park, I'm even talking about Mundy Park, and when we looked at forest management plan to try to keep things balanced so that we aren't forgetting users, the human users, we're also paying the bill, and we're trying to making sure that we're not losing focus on, well, yes, these are wonderful things to make it more environmentally friendly and everything, but at the same time, let's make sure it's not less safe, less practical, things like that. And I want to make sure that we keep our focus clearly on, citizens of Coquitlam.
Well, we agree totally.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Wilson.
Thanks. In the report from Urban Systems, it says rainwater should be managed in a manner that's consistent with the city's rainwater management design requirements and guidelines from 2009. And so it seems to me, as a layperson, that strategies seem to have changed a little bit since 2009 because of climate change and more extreme weather events and that sort of thing. Is that am I correct in that, or am I off base on that?
Well, the rainwater management features are designed to handle the small everyday rainstorms. So they really don't address those big peak floods that we're getting or extra rainfall. So
this integrated watershed management plan is not geared towards the extreme weather events or handling extreme weather events?
That's correct, yeah. The rainwater management are for the small 6-month events, actually. That's what they're designed to pick up. They also don't substitute for our 10-year design system. So our typical system, they're not meant to make that any smaller. It's on top of the existing design criteria. So if anything, we're getting a little bit more capacity than we had before. Some people, some regions are using them to offset that incremental change from climate change. But again, I want to repeat that they're not meant to pick up large volumes or peak flows.
I'd just like to add that the engineering department's 2015 work plan includes review of the storm sewer design criteria, and that is in response to the concerns about the climate change. So we review what we have today and whether we have to change it for the longer term.
Great, because we're replacing pipes. It costs only a little bit more to put a bigger pipe. And it's kind of goes to what Brent was talking about up at Burke Mountain, right? If we're getting more and more extreme weather events. Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else?
No.
Okay.
Great. Just one quick question. Top of page 3, one of the 7 bullets here. Consider watercourse development permits in the Lougheed and Coquitlam neighborhood plans. And because those plans are coming forward now, I'm just wondering if you could explain just what watercourse development permits are, and also you've just said consider, not that we should actually implement them.
Yes, our position from engineering is that we can advise the planning department on what we think is a suggested course of action, and that's really what these watershed plans are designed to do. They're designed to support and inform the neighborhood planning process. As far as watercourse development permits, like I mentioned, those were put into the Austin and Mayarville neighborhood plans. They basically put some development requirements or restrictions on the site in terms of discharge to the watercourse, which looks at water quality, setbacks for riparian care, and for also slope consideration.
So they're regulatory in nature then?
That's correct.
Okay, good, thank you.
Mr. You had a supplementary?
No, that's fine.
You okay? Okay, good.
Thank you. Move receipt.
Second.
Thank you very much. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Okay.
From the city manager. Yeah, I do things myself. Ooh, once in a while. Once in a while.
Item
Okay,
5 is,
we're going to have to keep going really quickly here.
Item 5 is a report regarding organizational reviews. We have introductory comments by our city manager.
It's my pleasure to give Council a comprehensive overview of the cyclical review process that we have been following since 2009. We have done 10 reviews to date, and we believe that this whole process of taking one segment of our organization and doing a focused review on that is actually a really best practice in terms of how to go about organizational change. As I said, we've now had 9 completed. One has been largely completed from staff perspective, has not yet been reported out to council. But many of these reviews, when they have been completed, that doesn't mean it's finished. There are ongoing changes that happen, and from time to time you get update reports on past reviews. This last year, you've had updates on both the building permits review and the IT review, and that's sort of like it gives council some insights into what has changed, what has happened, and so we're constantly keeping our eye on those issues that we had committed to follow up on. In the next 4 or 5 months, you will be getting 4 additional follow-up reports on past reviews, and we felt that was important because we have new staff in those areas. That includes communications. We have a new communications manager, a new GM of engineering. There were 3 past reviews on engineering, and Joseph is going to combine his update to council on all 3 of them at the same time in terms of just fine-tuning, tweaking as it were. And then we're going to be having a parks update very shortly in the next 2 months, along with strategic initiatives and some minor changes that have happened between responsibility of those 2 areas. One which we called not a formal cyclical review, but a review of the development planning side of planning. Jim has been very focused on the development approval process and has going to be coming forward with some recommended changes in that area. It's not what we call a full cyclical review, but it does involve some changes that council will see shortly. And the last one that we are very focused on, which we already reported out once a little over a year ago, we've done a lot of work this coming year and we'll be reporting as a follow-up report, is our cyclical review on our HR services. We've been doing a lot of work on that in terms of updating all our policies, forming a number of committees, staff committees, in terms of looking how we go about doing HR policies and procedures. And we'll be reporting out formally on that in about 3 months' time before the summer break. So that's my overview. There's always some personnel-related issues with each of those. This is the public side, which we're reporting out in this format, that how we structure and that kind of stuff, along with these reviews. Occasionally there are confidential personnel-related matters, and we have always dealt with those in closed session. So if there's ever any questions on any of those, I would prefer to answer those questions in closed. But in terms of the type of the reviews, the public face of it, how they're structured and all that, these are very public issues because it's how we deliver services to our citizens, and it's appropriate to do it in a very public forum, and that's why the report is here today.
Thank you. Mr. O'Neill.
Thank you, Pete. Just trying to make sure I understand the system. Are you now saying that using the expression organizational review as a parallel to cyclical review, does it mean the same thing?
We have, in every system, you shouldn't be totally static in terms of how you deal with it. 5 years ago when we started this, there were a number of significant issues, and we termed the phrase cyclical review, which involved a significant body of work, basically three sections: a detailed budget review, a detailed organizational review, including a consultant that had significant expertise in the area. We believe our organization has evolved.
Business process.
Pardon me?
You said there were three aspects.
The three aspects were
budget,
budget, and an outside look from an external consultant. We also usually had a staff component as well. Those were sort of like the areas that we really focused on in terms of cyclical reviews. And those were areas of the city where, as a new city manager and largely significantly new council makeup at that time, we wanted to delve into an area and make significant change in the area. What we're finding now is some of those areas, of course, are constantly evolving and need updating, and that's why we feel it's important for those areas to give updates to council periodically and to adjust as we go. But the dramatic change that we initially were focused on 5 years ago, we do not believe is necessary anymore. So we're going into more fine-tuning reviews, smaller reviews. But we like the concept of when we're doing organizational change to put it into the framework of a formal review. And it is cyclical in nature, so we're calling it a cyclical review, but it's not like those initial major ones that we did. For example, the one we're doing right now in the development side of planning, we did not hire an external consultant. We didn't do an extensive budget review. It was more an organizational thing, and so we could just call it an organizational review. We don't need to put it in this framework, but I think there's some value in lumping them all together and giving council a complete picture of all the organizational change that is happening.
Okay. So you're going to still use the expression cyclical review sometimes, and sometimes call it an organizational review? It's not just for our sake, but for the public as well. Let's be clear about this, because the way I understood it from reading this is that cyclical and organizational are about the same, and underneath either one, two main components: an operational review and a detailed budget analysis that might take place sometimes. So, but if that's not the way you wanted to express it, please tell me. But I think we should call it. There should be some unity of our communication here to ourselves, new council members, plus the cyclical and to the public as well.
The clinical definition of a cyclical review means a once-in-a-while review. We termed it cyclical review as a major review of one area which had a significant number of elements. We believe our organization does not need the dramatic change that it did 5 years ago. And so we are moving to not cyclical review light, but we don't believe we need the same level of external consultant assistance. On occasion we may, but on occasion a GM will come forward to our executive team and say, I really want to make some changes in this area. My comment is, well, we could simply review it and make some minor adjustments and not make a big deal about it. But if it's an organizational review, I think there's two levels. And the best example is the planning review that's going on right now. It's not a full cyclical review, right? But it is a review, and it deserves to be included in the suite of reviews that we're doing. But I don't call that a major cyclical review. We put it on the list. And so I think we just have to understand that differences. On occasion, if council comes to me and says, we really have some issues with this area, whether it's the police services or some other area that we've never done a major review, and we want a real in-depth review of that. We want you to look at budget issues. We want you to compare that area to how other communities give that service. We really want it to be a major thing. We want it to be an external consultant. We want it to be, and I would call that a full cyclical review. From time to time, there are minor kind of things, and I think it's important to recognize that difference. And so the way I view it is the cyclical review is the major big review that includes outside consultants. An organizational review, I want to have in the list, but it really should be a separate category, and maybe we should have 2 categories formally in the list.
Well, there could be a hierarchy there, that's fine.
There is a hierarchy, and that's the way I view it.
Okay, so that wasn't clear. And
we'll try to make that
Thank you very
clearer
much.
in the future.
Great, Brett. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the update report and being with myself and Richard on council when this was brought forward. At that time, we had a lot of concerns in council about how the operation of the city was going on and wanting reviews in a major way of all the departments to see where we're going. I still think from time to time, we've always talked that a cyclical review will still happen 5, 8 years or whatever to come back and look at it in a more in-depth way. And I understand Terry's comment about cyclical organizational. I understand where you're coming from. I think one of my points about this report is I really like it, and I'm going to keep this report. But I think you mentioned the word, and I was going to use the word, is we're not a static organization. We just came through an election. We have a lot of people talking about value for their tax dollar. We always talk about it. I think what we need is our corporate communications has to get this message of what we've been done from 2009 and the number of reviews that we have done. When you look at them all, the 10 reviews of this city, the changes we've made in the city, I don't believe we get that message out to our public in the city that in a broad way. People don't know that's going on. And I see Kathleen back there wants to make a comment.
It's one of the reasons why we wanted to make this a public report. And we can do further along that line, but that's one of the reasons why we put it on the public agenda.
Okay.
Kathleen?
Nikki and I have worked on an information bulletin that is ready to go. We just want to wait until the second report goes to council tonight, and it dovetails the 2 of them and highlights some of the achievements both on the cyclical reviews and the business improvement community outcome.
Well, that's good to hear. I'm pleased. Like I said, I've said before, in 2013 we got the Open for Business Award, and I said at that time a lot of the business and people, the improvements we did from planning and tax amendments that we always do on an ongoing basis to make things run better. We don't publicize it. We don't get it out. We don't sort of pat ourselves in the back the good work that we are doing, and this is good work. It was a difficult decision. I think there was some nervous staff at the time when we first started down this road, but I think everybody's found it to be very beneficial through the city. What I want to see keep happening within these is, like ITC, is every year or 2 years an update from the cyclical review, where we're at, where into the organizational reviews, what twists and turns, what continually is happening. And I mean, I've been here since those, and I just want to keep those updates coming on those.
I agree totally. And just to reiterate, we're going to do 4 this spring.
Yep.
Communications, engineering, and engineering will have 3 components to it. I've asked Joseph to sum up all the reviews that were done in that area: environment, fleet, and the overall organizational structure and the public works structure. So there's 4 done in engineering. The whole parks things, we now have a new approach, a new leadership in that area, and some commentary from that area. And then, like I say, the planning one, which wasn't a major review, but you'll see that as well. And all of that we hope to get for you, along with the HR review, which is 5 updates before the summer break.
That's good. I'm very pleased to see this report public, and once again, I think we're doing a lot of work, and we're not a static organization. I want to make sure the public understands that. Thank you.
Excellent. Just want to remind everybody we are 5% through our agenda here, so it's
Okay. Somebody who came on council, these were underway. I've been through, I think, 2 of them now. I think one of the things they did is they concentrated, what I would view, on staff and staff utilization, and in some cases we've come up with some redeployment. I think we found some efficiencies. The two that I was really pleased to see was the integration of the Parks, Rec, and Culture marketing resources into communications. I think some of these things made sense, as did building maintenance, moving from Parks and Rec over to strategic initiatives. So I think we've done some things where we've taken staff from here, we've moved them here, and we've had some synergies. But constantly, and this comes up at budget time, and we certainly heard it during the election time, is, are you reviewing budgets? Now, in here, there were two components. One is a review of functions within a department. The other was detailed budget analysis. And I know that what our residents want to hear is, did we go through with the mindset of how can we save money? And we're a growing city, so I'm not, nobody's expecting staff is going to go. If anything, we want to, find more efficient uses of staff, which we've done. But at what point do we go through, and I'm not going to sort of say we get down to the detail of counting the paper clips, but the non-staff related expenses, are they reviewed and with the idea of, can we save money?
Yes, they are. The major reviews, not the minor, more organizational reviews, but the major cyclical reviews, that was a huge piece of the initial 6 reviews that we did.
Yep.
In each of those reviews, there was a separate document produced, which was a line-by-line budgeting review of that particular area. That Sheena got involved, and John DeMont coordinated that part of the review, and there was a separate document listed, and in some areas there were some significant savings highlighted. I can recall in the environmental review, what we did is we deleted 2 positions and we created 1 position. The same way in the communications area, we did cut out some money, but in some other areas there was a need for just changing the way we deployed staff, as you highlight, moving some from here to the area, and in some areas we also felt that better manage an area, that we should add a staff person. That's happened in the lands review area, and we've done a host more land work since that time. So it was always a very, very detailed review of that, and that was helpful at the time, but it doesn't get done in every organizational review, just in the full cyclical reviews.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Will our stop doing list lead to saving money or just better efficiencies?
Largely, from my perspective, it'll lead more to efficiencies and the ability to do more with the same staff, as opposed to actually reducing budgets. We are a growing city, and many of the areas are not growing commensurate with the growth of the overall city, and so we have to constantly be looking at more efficient ways of using technology, but also reviewing what we historically have done and what we can stop doing. Some of those are hard to do, but we are focused on them, and later in the public agenda you have a separate report which we've combined what we call the stop doing list with a business improvements process. We have 2 processes, and it made more sense. We have a new manager, Nikki is here today. She helps us coordinate all those processes, and we're reporting out on those publicly as well. But largely they aren't going to be resulting in significant budget savings. They're going to allow us to stretch our existing staff and monetary resources further in a growing city.
Anybody else?
Okay. Move receipt.
Second. Moved by Terry, seconded by Brent. All those in favor?
Moving on to other business. Our first other business item relates to parking issues, Blue Mountain Street and Charland Avenue, raised by Councillor Asmussen.
Yes, thank you very much. We had a call from the developer that got turned down. How many people got a call from him? One of the issues that time when we all talked about was the parking on Charland Avenue, and the public hearing and the issues raised, and I mentioned this to Mr. McIntyre. But I thought we were going to be doing something. The parking issues result in the one property side there parking horizontally and dedicating it as his own private parking, but street parking is public, and I thought we were going to be doing something about that. And Mr. McIntyre said we're not doing anything with that right now. And generally, street parking streets are public for everybody to park on. Not, you don't own the parking in front of your house. And so that was raised in that public hearing, and I thought we were going to be doing something in that regard. And so, I guess my question is to Mr. McIntyre. Right there.
Yes, thank you. If I do recall. Thanks, Gary. Yeah, this question has come up on several occasions of late with some of the rezoning public hearings in the Southwest and around the concerns about on-street parking. I recall in those discussions there was identified as a condition, as a situation, and there were some drawbacks to that. I think I characterized it at the time as something that was tolerated. I think if there was to be complaints received, we would follow up on that, but we, certainly from a planning and development perspective, didn't see this direction to go and deal with that. We certainly do it on an individual application-by-application basis, and that's one of the benefits of the neighborhood attached residential applications in that area, is that opportunity to rationalize that road frontage and do away with some of these informal arrangements. But now certainly if it's council's desire for staff to look into that, that can be done. There may be other staff that are more responsible in those areas that may want to speak to that, the transportation side for one. But that was my understanding.
I guess the other people on council, my approach was that one person came up and spoke a couple of times about the parking. I'd put in complaints to the city at that meeting about the parking there, and some of the issues in that area was parking, but we have a zoning bylaw that stipulates parallel parking, not horizontal parking. We got developments, and we have to go with what's in the plan. So I just think that there should be something done about the parking issue, and I thought we were going to do something about that next door neighbor's parking issue on Charland Street. And so that was my recollection. It's open for anybody else in council to disagree with that, but I thought they were going to, that street parking, that person was taking over that parking, and the people down there say, well, you just taken ownership and we can't use it. And that's, I don't think that's so consistent.
I would like to add that, as I mentioned at that last public hearing meeting or shortly thereafter, the enforcement of such parking regulations typically is based on a complaints basis. In this particular instance, we did go out to the site and did some extensive reviews how that parking is operating. And because particularly south side of the particular roadway is not fully developed, indeed there is perpendicular parking, which is contrary to the streets and traffic bylaw parking regulations. However, from the engineering perspective, we looked at the risk that it poses to the pedestrians and other drivers. And at this point in time, the engineering department takes a position that the risk is deemed to be tolerable. Now, we will keep an eye on this situation because we anticipate that once the street redevelops, or at least some of the developments on the north side will be completed and populated, there is going to be more pedestrian traffic, therefore more conflicts, and particularly on the north side, closer to the westerly end of the street, we foresee significant concerns. But at this point, we take the position that the risk is tolerable.
Okay, because I also have the issue, I think it was raised by another councillor about single-family houses, a newer home there that, didn't put in the curb or the sidewalk or anything. And either, I know we did up in Westwood Plateau with a couple of developments that now it was off the back that we allowed them to put a credit line or bonding up, and it was up in the northeast also where they were developing off the front, we allowed off the back, but we were allowing bonding there. So, I mean, some way we have to get this, of single-family houses, get the, because this is another issue that's part of this issue. Because we got a new house built there, no curbs, no sidewalks. The subdivision that was turned down would have to put in all the curbs, and the one beside is already in there, just extending it.
No, Councillor Asmundson hits on a really critical point there, and this is one we've been wrestling with. And I'm pleased to say that we are doing a review right now, looking at that, because there are some inconsistencies. There's situations. In fact, this was flagged in the large house report tonight that's going to council. Where, as Councillor Asmussen described, where you have a subdivision application, part and parcel with that, the approvals and review, is the upgrading of the frontage, and that's that rationalization I was talking about, where you put in the curb and gutter and sidewalk, and it does away with that opportunity for perpendicular parking. In other instances, because the way our bylaws are currently structured, for single-family building permit construction, where there's no subdivision, no rezoning, no development permit, they're just operating under the BC Building Code and the city's building bylaw, and they are absolved from doing the frontage improvements. Our bylaw kicks in for 2 or more units, or for a construction value for those 2 or more units of $150,000 or more. So that's the way our bylaws are currently written. It calls for that servicing or frontage upgrading at that point in time. Now, this is something we want to look at, because we're not sure it leads to a level playing field between different types of development. And so staff are doing that review right now, and we'll be bringing that forward in the next month or two, I would think.
Just if I could just add something to that, we have highlighted that. We've had significant discussions, and Jim with engineering is leading that whole thing. And from my perspective, there shouldn't be an easier ride for one mega house than 2 smaller houses, just because we have the ability to impose that. So we're reviewing on that. The other issue that we're trying to address is piecemeal implementation of those. Yeah. When there's grades changes, where there's width changes, it looks very odd in a developing community where you only have, 100 feet of sidewalk and then nothing, because that hasn't been dealt with. So we're actually, that review, we're going to look at that aspect as well, and maybe we can marry those 2 things with the local improvement program, somehow do a better cash in lieu program and not run afoul of the law like we did last time. We think there's a better way of doing it. All of that needs to be thoughtfully thought out. We are going to be doing that this year, and we'll be reporting back to council with some options in that regard.
Okay, that's excellent. And maybe in terms of the horizontal or the horizontal parking, is it just a matter of reminding those homeowners that that's still public parking? It's not their parking.
Well, that's the issue. The one thing that we also talked about that as a group, signage is totally inappropriate for people to put up private signage that says this is private parking. Totally inappropriate. We have said we should go out and remove any kind of signage that comes to our attention. The whole issue with the perpendicular parking versus horizontal parking, when there is no curb, when there's a curb, it's very easy to delineate and to very easily to control it. If we were to control it, and we had this discussion, we could do that because our bylaw allows us to control it, but the unintended consequences of that would be many, many complaints and removal of parking from an area that's already deficient, which would result in significant complaints. And so there's a balance. And so that's where we asked Joseph to go out there and say, well, what is the risk? What is the relative priority? Is the solution going to cause more problems in the short term than the problem itself? Or should we wait until there's a formal curb? And
I think what we're saying is don't get rid of it, but just remind those homeowners that that's public. It's not theirs.
We agree totally with that, and we are going to be going out there and removing any kind of private signs that people put up.
And maybe just like a little card in their window or their windshield wiper saying, hey, remember this is public, or in their mailbox, or I don't know.
Well, that's the main issue, but I think the issue is that curbs will be in there in the future. We have to, and so the parking will change. That has to be, and it has to be like every other subdivision.
Okay, we agree.
Yep. A little point on top of that. Now, if we crack down on that, removing those signs and open up the public, people who own the lot that they were parking on could still, let's say, drive further and actually be on their own lawns if they wanted to, right?
There's some restrictions there. I don't know exactly what. You can't have too many cars.
Are you allowed to park on your own lawn? They would say, okay, fine, we'll just drive further up and park on our lawn right up next to our house. But that would run afoul of people who are other members of the public who are parallel parking.
We leave that to the experts.
I don't know. Okay.
We got lots to do here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's an issue you're aware of.
Yeah, but they got it.
Let me make note of that, and we'll report back. It can get a little uncontrolled at times, and again, it's when you go through redevelopment or somehow the road is upgraded, it it regularizes that parking arrangement.
Okay.
Anything else?
Move adjournment?
Second.
Adjournment, yes, okay. So, moved by Councilor Asmussen, second by Councilor O'Neill. All in favor?
10-minute break? 5-minute break?
5 minutes, just long enough to reset.
3-minute break?
3-minute break.